A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 8th edition of the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. We hope all of you and your loved ones are keeping safe and staying at home. It gives us immense pleasure and pride to tell you that this today is what has become India's largest education webinar for teachers, parents, and students. We have had a total of over 3,000 participants on our webinar series so far, and we look forward to your sustained support and help in the days to come. I'm your host for today, Shubhayu Roy. I'm also the co-founder of Notebook. Victor Hugo once famously said, "There is no force on earth strong enough to stop an idea whose time has come." India today sees massive growth of internet penetration. There are 600 million internet users in India, with rural areas seeing a growth of 45%. We face the advantage of a massive demographic dividend. 38% of internet users in India are of age 15 years or below. But what has made digital education an absolute necessity today has been the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has perhaps been the biggest crisis that humanity has faced in recent years. Despite the proliferation of internet, despite digital learning becoming so important in today's age, there remains a digital divide, a divide that separates people who have not become very tech savvy, a divide that separates people of different socioeconomic strata. Today's discussion aims to solve some of those issues, to look at the deeper root causes, and come up with ideas from our eminent panelists, who would then give advice and ideas to the rest of the attendees that they can take back. Before we move ahead, one request to all our participants. I can see some of you are already raising your hands. I can understand why, given the illustrious panel we have today. However, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. If you could use that and type in your questions, we have time earmarked for questions and answers at the end of the session, and we will try to answer them as best as we can. Without much ado, let me move on to our first speaker. It gives me great pleasure in introducing Mr. Philip Bharat. Mr. Bharat retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Bharat served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Bharat qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. It is my pride and pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Philip Bharat. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shubhayu. Thank you very much, Shubhayu. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, and a good evening to all our viewers, our esteemed panelists, and to you and Achin. I was just thinking, I was reflecting before this webinar on how rapidly the world is changing around us. It's changing so fast that sometimes we don't even have the time to reflect on the way we have absorbed these changes. Not even 6 months ago, while most of us were handling online banking, hotel and airline bookings, tax returns, online shopping, musical downloads, and hiring taxis and ordering food, we hardly realized that we had entered the digital revolution and it pervaded our lives. But as a teacher, when I look back to the classroom, I found that apart from the very, very few progressive schools, teaching in most schools was very much like I remember it from my days in the late 60s. Yes, school administrations had taken to digital devices and the administration and all that. But actual classroom work was a little slow in adopting digital techniques. Teachers prefer to teach in old ways, despite students crying out for new ways of learning. The common slogan I heard from children was, "If I cannot learn the way you teach, can you please teach me the way I learn?" So from February this year, 2020, with the COVID pandemic, and when it hit us, I've never seen so much turmoil and such a rapid turnabout that schools have had to make and have made. And I personally am amazed with the way schools have addressed this problem of lockdown. And I'm proud of my fellow teachers and all my colleagues all over who have risen to the occasion so rapidly. School buildings may be shut, but education has not shut down. Just as the migrant workers were given very little time to head home, teachers too had very little time to adjust to a type of teaching they were not very familiar with. I'm sure the range of familiarity with digital learning and teaching is very wide. I'm sure there are teachers who are very familiar with it and were competent to use it in the classrooms. And I can say equally that there were teachers who found it difficult to switch on a computer. And sometimes, the best way to teach somebody something, let's say to swim, would be to throw them into deep water and see how they swam out. And I think what's happened here is that teachers have been thrown into the deep end and they are swimming out pretty well. My greatest respect to teachers, not only for raising to the challenge so quickly and professionally, but also for the way in which they have balanced domestic chores, personal family issues, and having to share their laptops with spouses and children. It's not easy for a person to have his domestic rooms and areas invaded. Teachers can look right into students can look right into a teacher's room now, his study, his bedroom. Students too have had to adjust to learning from home. Not an easy thing for them. Children are used to open spaces and a lot of laughter and movement. And they've now been cooped up within four walls and glued to screens, and often sharing devices with their parents and siblings. The stress in this domestic space has been huge. In fact, this morning news was about the sales of laptops and computers. And I heard that laptops, especially the higher end and the middle end laptops, have spiked, which really means that parents and students now feel that online education is here to stay. And they haven't been going for the lower end laptops, they went for the higher end ones. One must never think that working from home is easy. It takes a lot of effort for the entire class to tune in and get connected, the first thing. It is one thing to use digital media in a normal classroom situation, where you introduce digital clips and videos as well as podcasts as a part of your 45-minute class. It is an entirely new ball game for a teacher to sit and teach a number of children for 5 to 6 online classes daily. Also, digital classes with 20 children could be manageable. What about schools with 60 in a class? Would it be impossible for a teacher to manage such a large number? I don't know. As digital learning platforms for large groups become more user-friendly and teachers' work and effectiveness will improve, schools have adapted and adjusted as they've gone along, from Zoom to Google Classroom to Microsoft Net. So the good thing about teachers is they are adaptable. As they are moving, they're learning, they're adjusting, they're improving. Teachers have had to prepare for digital teaching even more than they've had to do for regular classes. Parents are often hovering around their children on online classes and writing it to complain if they find fault with teachers. Students are more difficult to manage as they are in their comfort zone with their families. Often classes are being disturbed by children not switching off their mics. It has also been reported that students disturb lesson. And in a case I know about, some students even put objectionable videos which were downloaded onto the Zoom meeting. The question of connectivity, of course, is perennial. And very often students will go offline only to return and to be very confused with what he's missed. If you look at digital learning from the point of view of a student, it may be novel to begin with, but even if a thing is new and children like it, sometimes gets monotonous and dull. And unless a teacher learns to innovate and be creative in these classes, just as he would need to be creative in a normal classroom setting, children get bored. Sitting at home sometimes fails to bring to the online lesson that gravity and that sense of seriousness that is seen in classroom teaching, where the teacher rules. Here at home, it seems to be the students are ruling. Also, not all students have access to the best connectivity and laptops. And so some students may be disadvantaged. The lack of individual attention and personal connect also leads to a disconnect between students and taught. Assessment of work learned is another weakness of online study, but this too will be addressed as we work in better assessment packages. Heads of schools and principals of boards have been quick to do something for their students, and this help has been as varied in style as there are schools. Some are doing daily online classes, others do it on some days. Some schools add activities like debates, elocution, yoga, singing, and dance classes, while others have downloaded clips, websites, and podcasts to hear and respond to. Many ICSE and CBSE schools have had to adapt to the IB style of research assignments and self-study. In these past few weeks, I've judged a lot of photography and art and debates, photography competitions online. Some schools have had their principals address their students in informal assemblies, while another school, very, very innovative, has had its music department entertain the students online, because principals are very aware of the stress that online education might cause. And so it is very wonderful to see these teachers playing their instruments and regaling the children. Students I have seen have had the pleasure of learning online. I've seen some students close up at hand, and I think they're enjoying what they are doing now. And whatever one may say, the pandemic has given a huge fillip to online teaching. And this thrust that has been, this change that has been thrust upon us has been waiting in the wings for too long. After the problem of the pandemic passes with time, or this discovery of a vaccine, what is going to happen? Will things slip back to the pre-pandemic normal? I just hope not. Having gone so far and done so well, my guess is that school authorities will now make use of the momentum achieved to drive home the fact that this is how children want to learn and have been learning for the past 4 months. I'm sure that teachers would have realized that digital learning has its advantages and can aid learning, so that even teachers who have resisted digital learning and teaching will have realized that a hybrid system of traditional schools and digital aided teaching is the way forward. Children today are visual learners, and digital learning is just down their street. The generation gap that existed between teacher and taught because of this gulf in digital expertise is now being bridged. To close, my advice to all teachers is, this is going to be the new normal. So get qualified, skilled, and competent at digital learning, teaching. Things are only going to get easier with better connectivity and more interactive learning platforms. The teacher's role will not be secondary to the computer, but will actually be advanced, as lessons will need to incorporate digital learning alone with the other non-digital forms of instruction. One will have to, just as in the traditional class teaching, adopt new and exciting methods of digital teaching. To vary one's lesson is the key to sustaining interest and excitement. Also, teachers have also got to start thinking about life after COVID-19. How are they going to amalgamate the traditional forms of teaching with modern digital teaching? And some of my concerns are the fact that not all students are being equally benefited. There are some people in rural areas who don't have the connectivity. Digital learning has further revealed the economic and geographical divide between the haves and the have-nots. Teachers not being paid during these lockdown months, and schools really having to face financial crunches. This too is a problem. Teacher training from now on will have to include digital learning techniques. And it may sound the end of the road for some teachers in schools that do not and will not adopt new teaching methodologies. And my greatest fear is that parents hankering for marks and grades post the pandemic will press the schools and teachers to quickly revert to the familiar rote and note giving classes once the pandemic is over. I hope I have been audible. Thank you so much, Mr. Vayu. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those inspiring words. It's heartening to see such active adoption of technology by our institutions. And as you rightly pointed out, this global crisis might just prove to be the stimulus for a momentous change in our school education system. With that background in digital learning tools, it is now time to introduce our next speaker, Achin. Mr. Achin Bhattacharya is the founder and CEO of Notebook. He's a chartered accountant by training, and he was a director at Deloitte before starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler, with a keen interest in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He's a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce, and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He's also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Yeah. Shubhayu, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to welcome all of you again to our session. And I really thank you for your time and for being here with us today for the cause of education. A very special thanks to our panelists today for agreeing to come and share their views on a topic which is very relevant. Now, let us first of all understand what digital divide is all about. Although fundamentally all stakeholders of the educational ecosystem are principally aligned to promote the cause of education, there are various alternative approaches, and I guess that's quite logical, or schools of thought towards the choice of ideal pedagogy. And as in any case, in any democratic setup, everyone is entitled to voice their own opinion. Now, moving on, what is the divide all about? We must be flexible and open-minded in our approach as we are trying to find out what is right and not who is right. Now, I believe there are two distinct schools of thought. First are those who are early adopters of technology. And second, we also have an esteemed group who are not principally aligned to it, but they're trying to adapt to it. But the way I like to put it is that it was not in their priority list, as they didn't see much value in it. Now, I fundamentally believe that this approach of looking at a digital divide as watertight compartments is not correct. Before going into the granular aspects, I think we should first appreciate the fact that while digital technology may be an efficient enabler to reach a wider number of students, or helps in ensuring convenience of 24/7 anywhere, anytime access, but it is not a means of a different way of teaching. It is at best an amplifier to increase the effect and reach of a good teacher who will have more effective teaching aids at his disposal. Now, the current situation has resulted in an unprecedented crisis which schools had never dealt with in the past. Thus, the shift in many cases, if not all, has been involuntary. Technological challenges in the form of infra challenges, say, be it parents and children sharing a laptop because parents are also working from home, or digital proficiency that has suddenly been put to test. But I guess schools, teachers, parents, students, everyone has really put their best foot forward and have very quickly responded to the needs of the hour. It can be safely said that the adoption of digital technology was slow but steady. As Bharat sir mentioned, that it was waiting in the wings for a long time. The current crisis has definitely acted as a catalyst and expedited the process. And any change becomes a new normal if it really adds value to our lives. So for digital education to gain more acceptability, the key is being able to add more value. Now, the way I look at it, I firmly believe that if something adds real value to our lives, we will all take effort to ensure that we have seamless access to it. So instead of discussing about the fact that, why a certain group was not early adapters to technology, the way I like to put it is, since I run a digital brand, I look at it as a personal responsibility that for all EdTech brands, we also need to ensure that we offer adequate value. So the question is that, how do we bridge the gap? By adding value. Now, when we started Notebook a few years back, there were certain issues that we were thinking of. And even today, after 2.5 years, and with more than 5 lakh students subscribing to Notebook, more than 500 schools partnering with us, and more than 10,000 videos that we have worked on, the fundamentals still remain the same. Now, what are they? First and foremost, I think what is most important is that digital content can't be a mere tick in the checkbox. It has to make a positive and substantial impact. We need to really service a need. So for that, most important is first identifying the need and then appropriately servicing it. Second, I think what is most important is the pedagogy aspect. How are we teaching, right? We should be able to grab eyeballs. We can't force a student to watch something unless it's really special. Now, if I ask you, all esteemed members of the audience, that how many WhatsApp forwards do we get in a day? Our friends, colleagues, team members sharing videos to us on various topics. And how many of them do we seriously and sincerely watch in the end? I was reading a survey that says most WhatsApp videos that we get as forwards, most of them, we watch for less than 5 seconds. Now that clearly proves the point that unless and until something is really good, something is really special, students don't take the effort of going through it. So content needs to be engaging. There cannot be any two ways about it. Next, what is very important is that we need to offer maximum value for time invested. We need razor sharp editing. We need to question ourselves, why will the student at all need us? He or she has a lot to do, right? They're busier than us. Studies, sports, music, family time, friends, socializing. Why us? What purpose am I serving? So it is very important is that we offer maximum value for time invested. Hence, when we embarked on the journey, we ensured that our videos are short and crisp. Average length of a video that we look at is only for 6 to 8 minutes. Because more than that, keeping attention span of a child becomes difficult. If it's a long topic, we try to break it into various smaller videos. Next, are we serving any real purpose? We are here to support and supplement. We are not here to replace the teacher, right? The teacher will always be most important. But we need to really support, supplement. So we need to understand that where are we taking over? Where do our role exactly start from? And where do we need to step back? There are certain discussions that can happen only in a class. And we understand that. But there are certain need gaps that we also need to fill up, that we can fill up and add value. Next, very important is that let's look at things from the student's perspective, right? In this entire chain of event, the student is the most important person. Is our content mapped to syllabus? Or are we only providing broad conceptual clarity? Because many EdTech platforms which do not offer content which is mapped to syllabus offer broad clarity, which is good. I'm sure they add value. But the question is that in that case, how are they any different from any open source platform like YouTube? You go to YouTube and you search and you're going to get hundreds of videos on any particular topic. So what we ensured was, and this was something which was very important to us, that the content needs to be completely mapped to syllabus. Shubha, I can see some disturbance. Next, what is also important is that how about the student, how about access? Like when we started this, we wanted to ensure that the same content should be accessible to the student both in school and out of school, right? We wanted to ensure that the student should be able to access the content even from home. That was very important to us. So we didn't want that any content which is played only in school and the student sees it only once in an academic year, that really doesn't add value beyond a point. We wanted to ensure that the student should be able to revise from our content, study the content, use it during examinations, etc. Next, what was equally important was that how are we easy to use? Are we logical in terms of our sensibility? Because always we need to ensure, because there's something that we remembered from day one. We are not a technology company, right? We are in education and we use technology only to deliver our offering to your doorstep. So the moment technology becomes more important than the real purpose, which is educating the student, we'll end up losing the plot. Now, machine can ensure flawless replicability and reach, but it cannot replace the innovation and emotional quotient that only a human mind can bring in. So we always ensure that our primary focus should be on education. Next, what is very important is 3 cornerstones. First, conceptual clarity for a particular topic. Students should develop interest and gain conceptual clarity. Second, minimum hardware requirements, right? A student should be able to access our content from any device which is connected to the internet and has a screen, be it a smart TV, laptop, tab, smartphone, anything. Third, equally important is parental supervision. And I think that is something that has become, parental involvement has really increased during last few months. And students need this help, especially students in lower classes with regard to access to technology, and even students in higher classes with regard to parental supervision in terms of the kind of content they are watching. So parental involvement is very important. Next, moving on, what is also equally important is when we are working on digital content, and we have taken real effort to ensure that students should be able to engage in group activities. A particular video, a student should be able to flawlessly share to his or her friend, and that should not take more than a fraction of a second over WhatsApp. That should be very easy. So we need to promote group activities. We need to promote peer-to-peer learning. That's also very important, right? And give enough scope for practice. So add value in real terms. Now, we also want to help with a responsive evaluation platform, which is very important, right? So that a student, and the objective of the platform should not be to only judge the student, but also to suggest or chart out a customized learning path. We are working on it. Now, what is a long-term vision? So any digital content, I think what is most important is when you embark on a journey, you should be very clear about where you want to reach. So as far as our long-term vision goes, we are very clear about one thing, that we are here to educate in an engaging manner and not to entertain. Hence, we clearly try to stay away from distracting animation. Distracting animation, at times, you quickly get noticed, but it doesn't help in memory retention. So we took great effort to ensure that a lot of hand-drawn illustrations are used. Definitely, it's much more time-taking. It's far more effort is required, but it's good for the child in long run. Next, what is also equally important is, unlike popular perception, digital content can never be static. We are not building a digital library to earn lifetime royalty. So we really have our ears on the ground for feedback and are flexible and receptive to suggestions. Next, I think in order to ensure relevance, in order to ensure acceptability, the way I look at it, all well-loved brands, so they belong to users, right? A popular brand doesn't have customers, it has patrons and fans. It belongs to all. Hence, I sincerely believe Notebook belongs to all of you. The kind of love, appreciation, support that we get from you, that really encourages us to work hard. The entire team feels motivated when we get so many feedback mails, we get calls, people suggesting, people chipping in. So hence, it's very important to involve everyone. So even so, as I told you, that digital is only a way to effectively reach students, right? The basics of education remain the same. Hence, we try to involve teachers, parents, school owners, and of course students to be a part of this movement. So the way I reach out is that be engaged, feel free to criticize, suggest. It will only help us grow better. Be a part of this mentoring journey where we are striving towards nothing but unparalleled excellence. Now, what is the way forward with regard to digital content? How do we look at it post this pandemic? I believe that although it will take some more time, but schools will again reopen their gates. And we will again hear the chorus of children's voices in our classroom corridors. There is no denying the fact that schools indeed serve a much wider purpose of ensuring overall personal development of a child. That's very important. However, last few months have proved beyond doubt that accessible and affordable digital education can definitely contribute much more to the education landscape than what its previous role was. I mean the pre-COVID phase, the pre-pandemic phase. So where we were 3 months back, 2.5 months back, and where we are today, this sea change. So this is definitely proved, and I'm sure digital brands, they have stood up to the challenge. We all have stood up to the challenge, and we have tried our best to contribute. So when I see so many students accessing the content, sending mails, thank you mails, appreciation mails, we feel that our effort is worth it. People are being benefited. However, euphoria and larger than life image can only take us till a point. Unless we add value each day and to the life of each student who comes to us, the entire purpose of our existence will be futile. Now, in a country as vast as ours, centralized buildup of best-in-class educational content, storage in cloud, and its wide distribution can indeed contribute to millions of lives by helping to raise the standard of education. I think we have a very diverse panel today, and I'm sure they will enlighten us further with more deliberations on this topic. I sincerely thank you all for giving me a very patient hearing. I look forward to taking your questions later during the session. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful exposure on our vision and mission on what we are trying to do with Notebook. Thank you for that. Before we move on to our eminent speakers, and I'm sure you're all eagerly waiting, I will again request all attendees to please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in any questions that you might have. I would also take this opportunity to, for a few quick minutes, take you through the Notebook portal, and because of the teachers who are attending today, just give them a quick glimpse of how easy Notebook is to use as a product. When you visit www.notebook.school, this is the page that you would be seeing. Is this visible? So you click on the login button here. And since Notebook is perfectly free right now for everybody, we have a username called Study at Home and a password 1234 that you can then use to log in. Once you have logged in, please notice we have not asked for any personal information at any given stage, because it is our genuine motive to make sure everybody has access to this quality educational content without us having to build up a database to bug people later with. You go to My Subject, under which you'll find your board CBSE, and then you can navigate to the various classes. As you can see, we have classes 1 to 12 and all the subjects. So if I go to class 9 social science, for every subject you would find the various subtopics. So under social science, you have history, geography, economics, and political science. And then you can choose a topic like French Revolution. Once you click on it, the video would start playing. I will reduce the volume. This has been built on a Google backbone that runs the same product, YouTube, that reaches all of you at your homes today. This has been done expressly with the purpose that it becomes really easy to access and can operate even with lesser bandwidth if you have a connectivity issue. We also have notes, written textual notes that help students understand things better, and solved question banks that help students revise questions from the textbook or past year's papers before a particular exam. Every topic also gets a recap and a Q&A video that helps with quick revision and preparation before an exam. Under boards, you would find regional boards like UP State Board and West Bengal State Board. Interestingly enough, if you go to the UP State Board content, you would see that we have approached it with two languages. That is, every topic first gets a vernacular synopsis so that the students find it easier to understand a particular topic. And then the lesson is done in two languages. For example, for UP State Board, we do it in a mixture of Hindi and English.
नमस्ते बच्चों, नोटबुक में एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है। आज हम बल्ब के आविष्कारक थॉमस एडिसन के विभिन्न प्रयोगों।
So this is the vernacular language synopsis, and then below you would find the lesson videos which are done in a 50-50 mix of Hindi and English. The recap is completely in English and the question answers are again completely in English, so that there's a natural hand-holding of the student from a comfortable, familiar vernacular language to the English language, which is the whole point of teaching this subject to the students. Well, that was the quick demo that I had in mind for you. I know all of you are extremely eager to move on to our panel discussion, and I won't keep you from it. But first, we have our eminent speakers. It is my privilege to introduce to you Major General Neeraj Bali. Major General Bali has served the Indian Army for nearly 4 decades and has been a decorated veteran. He has been the founder and CEO of Leadscape Advisors. He also worked in the corporate sector as the CEO of 2 different entities. Major General Bali has been a motivational speaker, an educational professional, and a certified leadership and life coach. Sir, if you're there, I would now hand over the controls to you.
Thank you. Ganesh, yeah. All right, thank you very much for this opportunity, for inviting a soldier to speak on a subject like bridging the digital divide. But education has been close to my heart as well. Now, we've been hearing for the last many months about the enormous challenges that everyone is going to face once the cloud of coronavirus has passed. And education, of course, is no exception. I think by and large, our understanding has grown. The challenges are understood and in some cases being met. And everyone also understands that our transformation or turn towards the digital end of the business is not in any way a replacement of the brick and mortar establishments. As Achin brought out a moment ago, that it doesn't challenge the primacy of the teacher and certainly keeps the student in the center stage. So all of that is going to be as it is. What I'm going to do is to talk about a few opportunities. And I must say that Mr. Philip Bharat did echo some of my thoughts. So the first opportunity that I would like to mention here is the fact that, to use his words, we've been thrown into a deep end. But by and large, if you look at it from the point of view of digital education or digitization of education, we've been dealt a pretty good hand. Anybody who's been thrown into a deep end, and as a cadet back in 1975, I was, you realize that you thrash around. It's a little fearful, little anxiety ridden, but in the end you learn to swim. And that's precisely what is happening. It is amazing about the number of teachers, the amount of students, the public at large, which has come so quickly to embrace this part of technology, of going online, of studying and working from remote distances. And the amazing part of it is also that it has happened without any government intervention, without any structured sort of programs for it, and without really spending any public exchequer money. So in one fell swoop, if I may use the word, we have suddenly moved from the self-imposed limit of so-called smart classrooms as our upper edge of the technology into an entirely new area, into a new arena. And I think that's a very, very good thing. So we should seize this opportunity with both our hands. And I see no reason to make a U-turn once Corona is over. There is all the reason to build on it. The second point that I want to talk about is the fact that as a student, I always felt that the content was always not always digestible, not always what I wanted. The same issue has been brought out both by Mr. Philip and I think Achin. But today, when you have to teach in a hybrid model, when some of the content must be sent to remote location without the teacher being physically present to explain, I think we have no choice but to make the content the king. And I think that's a great thing in itself. Engagement of students has been a perennial concern from my days, and I'm sure days before that. And today we have this great opportunity of producing content that is engaging and that a child, a student can look forward to imbibing on his own. And I must say, I have come across Notebook only recently. And I must say that I visited the site at fair amount of detail. I've seen all the 4 boards and all the free content that Notebook has put out. And I can say this without any ambiguity in my own head, that it is some of the finest content, probably the finest content, which should be available to the students. And I must congratulate the people who have the force which is behind it. So I think that in itself is a great opportunity. The third point I want to make is about the future. If we keep joining the dots correctly, if we keep moving up on this trajectory, we have a great opportunity of integrating digital education with artificial intelligence based feedback. I must repeat what Achin said. The idea is not to have the sexiness of technology for the sake of it. The idea is to use the technology as a servant to the larger cause of education. And so you can do with artificial intelligence. We already have the examples of algorithms being used by Netflix and Prime Video and so on and so forth, just trying to read our minds all the time and recommending what should be done. I think we have an opportunity here where we can continually improve our content, continually tweak our methodologies based on the kind of feedback we get almost seamlessly from all the portals to whom we are disseminating education. So I think that's one great opportunity that is coming forward to us. And I'm sure professionals like you are already looking at it. My penultimate point is to do with 3 issues. You know, now that we are trying to advocate digital education, and I'm definitely part of that advocacy, we are approaching this whole issue. I would say that first of all, we are at a stage when there need be no timidity about this advocacy. Digital education is not replacing anything, but digital education does not have to play a second fiddle. I know there are concerns. I know there are concerns about the availability of bandwidth, rural areas, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But overall, what we need to be concerned with is that our digital education must not make the mistakes that the offline education long made. First of all, I've already covered the entire idea of engaging students, engaging children who are sitting in remote locations, sometimes without the benefit of intervention of their parents or any adult. So I think we must look at the content in that way. And at the cost of repeating, I would say, I don't think I need to preach to Notebook because that's like preaching to the choir. The second thing we must advocate and handle correctly is never should an impression be given that this is one newfangled thing which is going to add to the workload of the overburdened teachers. One of the greatest problems and challenges that I've seen as CEO of a rural education society, I was in charge of running 92 schools and colleges. And I saw that every teacher is concerned with the amount of work they have, not just in terms of teaching, but all the other administrative work and the documentation they have to do. So let us design our programs in a way that take away some of that load and replace it, that lightens the burden and doesn't add to it. Otherwise, the whole approach is going to meet with stiff opposition from one of the most important stakeholders, that is teacher. The third part is that I may be using strong words and I may be wrong, but it is my experience as a little bit of an educationist that one of the prime problems with our education system is also that it doesn't really prepare the children to join battle the next day. Obviously, that problem is more of the colleges, not of schools. But eventually, employability is a core concern. Sure, we have to raise children to be great citizens, and all of that is very important. But there is no parent on this earth which is sending children to school or college and saying, all right, go have a good time. If you don't get a job, it's fine with me. And this problem of employability, in part, stems from the fact that our syllabi are moribund. They are never revised. They're very hard to revise, actually. The books are very hard to revise. And I'll give you a fascinating peek into why they are hard to revise. So when I was CEO of this education society, I called the principal of one of the two ITIs I had. And I said, you know, we have a lot of air conditioners, and you have a course, a 2-year course called refrigeration and air conditioning. So why are we giving the maintenance to some outsider outsourced agency? Why don't we give it to our children? They, after all, have to just clean it and maintain it, and we give the money. Instead of giving it to an outsourced guy, we give it to the kids. He said, can't be done. And I said, why? He said, because in this 2-year course, split AC is not taught. Can you imagine a setup which is only supposed to focus on employability in a 2-year course on air conditioning does not teach split ACs? So I got a little head up and I said, okay, get your syllabus tomorrow. I'm going to cut out part of it and we are going to introduce split AC. He said, no, it can't be done. Because all the professors who teach in ITI, all the teachers who teach, they didn't have split AC in their days. So what am I aiming at? What I'm saying is sometimes the advances in technology and education are so quick that's very hard to revise syllabi. And that is where digital content comes in. You have the flexibility of going ahead, reaching beyond the boundaries of what is already being taught, and injecting those elements which will make the children ready to join battle, to use a soldier's word, from the day they step out. So I think that's a great area which we should look at. The last thing, which was really not something I thought about, but I was just listening to everyone. Sure, there are challenges. Sure, people are going to talk about the real India, the Bharat in the villages, which doesn't have that kind of bandwidth. So what are we talking about? Is this a lead concern? Are we just talking to each other in urban India? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think we should be taking counsel of affairs. Let's give it to rest of the country to use its ingenuity, and I'm just going to give you 2 examples. Look at the way how the entire country has embraced the telecom revolution. Every person is walking around with a smartphone, even in the villages. How has the entire country embraced the whole digital economy all over the country when there were so many naysayers in 2014? So I think we have a duty to inject this so that rest of the country is pulled up and we don't stay where we are. Status quo, I'm afraid, is no longer the option, certainly after this disruption. And I'm going to end with a famous, not a famous, but my favorite quote on status quo. And that goes, some people love status quo long after quo has lost all status. So I don't think we need to go in that direction. I look forward to the discussion. I'm sure many more issues will come up. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. This was absolutely enlightening. If you could please stop your share, we would take over. It is now my privilege to introduce to you our next speaker. This is Sutapa Acharya, who is the principal of Guru Teg Bahadur Public School from Durgapur, West Bengal. She has been the principal of the school for 5 years now, and she has been in the education system of schools for the last 22 years. Ma'am holds a postgraduate degree in biotechnology and management, along with a B.Ed. She started as a postgraduate teacher of biology in Army Public School in 1999 and became the headmistress of the G.D. Birla Center for Education and went on to become the vice principal of the APJ School, Kolkata. She has been a resource person for the CBSE board for more than a decade now. She is a key trainer and mentor for implementation of comprehensive continuing education process for a number of schools. She has been on the inspection committee of schools who vie for CBSE affiliations. She has been the national awardee in the year 2018 under the category of Best Principals in India. It is indeed our privilege to have ma'am with us today. Ma'am, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear.
Thank you so much, Meghna and team of Notebook, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of the Notebook discussion today. I have a few observations here because, we are dealing with the ground realities a little more closely than probably many of us here. My colleagues on the webinar today would definitely agree with me that there are a number of issues that we are moving around trying to grapple to the best of our capacities. When I say this to you, being a student of biology, I think I'm in a position where I understand Charles Darwin completely well when he said survival of the fittest. We are trying to fit into the situation as teachers. We had no second plans or options being given when suddenly the lockdown happened and we were not instructed, but we were asked to move into an era or move into a platform which we were not very comfortable with. When I say we, I'm talking on behalf of the entire teaching fraternity here with me, because many of us had a difficulty migrating from the physical confinements of the classroom to the digital platform. Here in schools, everywhere in schools rather, we teach about being physically, socially, emotionally close, and suddenly we were in a situation where we were supposed to be physically distant, but socially, emotionally close to each other. All the more because there were a number of situations which probably all of us are dealing with, starting from financial crisis to maybe the loved ones not being with us, to a number of other situations which are at times difficult to cope with. However, keeping aside all these, we did move into and we rose up to the situation pretty well. In the happenings of my school, I can tell you, we were initially with a free platform. To work around, I had colleagues in my school who just have a couple of months of service left, yet probably they were the first ones to come to rescue, and they said, yes, we'll give it a try. When I said that we have to go online, we have to go for online teaching, they were the first ones to say, okay, fine, these are the same people. If I asked them to stay back after school for a class of computer teaching or computer learning, they had a difficulty. But here they were who rose up to the situation because our interest was the children back at home whom we were not able to reach out. Believe me, being a teacher for 2.5 decades almost now, it is very difficult for me to walk into a school building which is absolutely quiet. We do say keep quiet, but we don't literally mean it. We love the chatter. We love what happens in school. As a head of the school, I don't realize when it becomes 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's only the peace in the corridor which tells me that, okay, fine, the school hours are off and I can get on with my office work. So we are all learning, trying to move on. I'll give you an example. These days people are watching a lot of these cooking videos, wherein people are teaching their recipes. I understand there's a friend of mine who does a lot of these videos. She said she has to do at least, as a pro now, she has to do as many as 10 takes to make a perfect video. And here we were people who didn't even know probably, other than of course handling Facebook and maybe WhatsApp, we were thrown into at a time to take an entire 40-minute class on various topics, connect with the children, not depending on the body language that we could read when we were in the physical confinements of the classroom, and yet reach out to the students. We were not only dealing with online misbehavior, which I'm sure all of you who are into classrooms now would agree, misbehavior of parents, because we had parents who were helicoptering, tagging teachers. We were not only being discussed, we are in fact not only being discussed across, outside the school gates, we are now discussed over a platform which has 100 plus viewership. We are being discussed for our pronunciation, we are being discussed for our mannerisms, we are being discussed for lack of warmth. However, the only thing which I do have colleagues speaking to me, I do have parents speaking to me on these regards, and the only thing I tell them is, please be patient, because we are migrating to technology. Give us time. I'm sure we will bounce back. And that we have. Looking at the larger scenario, there's been a lot of learning and happening and sharing which has taken place over the last couple of weeks that we are into now, the digital method of teaching. Not that it wasn't happening earlier, it was happening. We had remote learning, but then it was happening probably in higher education through distance mode of education, whatever. But schools, it was slightly foreign, because we would depend upon technology only as a teaching aid. We didn't depend on it to take the entire class on. So my only word of caution to parents, to everybody, to my fellow colleagues here, that we need to be a little more patient. Yes, we have to innovate, and thanks to CBSE coming out with circulars every day, where we are, the latest one being that we now have to move into competency-based education. We were doing, not that we weren't doing, but we have to be a little more organized, where the learning objective and the learning outcome has to be correlated, evaluated, assessed every way. One thing I have noticed, and which I really wish to mention here, is teachers who were appreciated in classrooms are the same people who are being appreciated even on online teaching. So if you are a good teacher, I think that's your USP, and you continue doing so, because you will be anyway appreciated whichever platform it could be. If you were able to reach out to your children in the classroom, I'm sure you are able to reach out to your students even if you're teaching on a digital platform. A good teacher is always a good teacher. You see, the classroom doesn't change, the students don't change, their behaviors change under different teachers. When I'm taking my rounds in the school, I can, even without looking at who's into the classroom, the kind of noise or with the kind of interaction that's happening in the classroom, I can tell you which colleague of mine happens to be inside. So it doesn't matter whichever platform we could be using to teach, but we know that if I am a good teacher, I will reach out to my students because I know how to engage them. If I could engage them properly in a classroom, I know I'll be able to engage them even when I'm doing an online class. If I'm not a teacher who would shoot into the classroom and go blah, blah, blah with a topic, I'm the same person who won't do that even when I'm doing an online teaching. If I don't get a response from a student for a couple of minutes, I know I have to tap the student. I knew that even when I was doing classroom teaching. So with aspects to classroom management, yes, certain things have changed. Maybe I'm not able to look into the eye of my student, because as a teacher, I understand if I walk close to a student, if I look at a student for a certain time, the student can also gauge what the teacher is thinking. Therefore, my understanding at this minute is transition is happening. It's happening well. All we need is your patience and your support, and I'm sure we will be able to sail through this situation. I'm not giving up, in spite of whatever. I'm not giving up, and I look ahead that there would be a time when I'll get back my students across me, physically across me, and I will be able to be with them once more, and I'll be able to relive the same classroom situations that I had a couple of months ago. The only learning in this entire lockdown is I will never pray again for holidays, because I think I have had enough of it. So thank you so much. I've put across, I think, whatever I have understood for the last couple of weeks that we have been into online teaching. It's a difficult situation, but like I said, if I'm good at it, I'm good at it anywhere and wherever. Thank you so much, Meghna and the entire team of Notebook for allowing me to speak. I'm done, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The privilege has been completely ours. One of the best parts about the Together for Education webinar has been listening to teachers, principals from all over the country, giving us such phenomenal, optimistic inputs about digital education, not just from the metro cities, but even beyond. It is now time for the panel discussion that all of you have been waiting closely for. Let me introduce our panelists to you one by one, and as I introduce them, I would invite them for their opening remarks. We would start with Mr. Roy De Silva. Mr. Roy De Silva is principal of the St. Stephen's CBSE School, Togan, which is in Chandigarh, for the past 13 years. Prior to this, he has had nearly 3 decades of experience in mainstream education in various schools in India and abroad. He holds a master's degree in English and in Bible study. Sutapa ma'am, if you don't mind, could you please? Thank you so much. I beg your pardon. Mr. Roy De Silva holds a master's degree in English and in Bible studies. His passion is reading, music, and quizzing, and he takes personal interest in each child's all-round development. He conducts seminars both for teachers and students. Here's an insight that we just found out a couple of days back. His entire group of 800 students, Mr. De Silva knows each and every one of them by first name. During this COVID-19 lockdown, he has personally guided the online classes throughout the school. His firm yet gentle counseling from time to time has abated the apprehensions of both students and parents, resulting in great success of the online learning program. He is lovingly referred to by the students as a walking encyclopedia. He has traveled extensively and has in-depth knowledge of people and cultures. His leadership skills are greatly sought after in the school and in the region. He is a principal par excellence. It is our privilege to have Mr. Roy De Silva with us. Sir, may I invite you for your opening remarks, please? Sir, if you could unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, perfectly. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for that introduction and also for having me on this panel. Thanks also to Achin and Abhishek and all the others in Notebook for organizing these webinars during these days. I'm aware that there are listeners from other countries as well, so I will not wish anyone a good evening because it could be morning or early afternoon in other parts of the world. I was captured by the poster that went out, which has 2 hands, one a robotic one and one a human hand, with the caption "Bridging the Digital Divide." And Achin, during his presentation, asked a very pertinent question. He says, which side are you on? Well, I can say that I'm right in the middle of it there. And Sutapa Acharya was talking about the closure of schools. And I would like to emphasize that while schools are temporarily closed, learning continues. It's a different kind of learning. Students are being educated remotely using technology, and it is being done through a variety of online courses. One thing that has been brought home to me in a very powerful manner during these 8-9 weeks of lockdown is that resilience must be built into our educational system. And that resilience and that ne'er-die spirit begins with those in charge of any educational system. Another observation is that technology is definitely the answer. What sort of an answer is it? We will only know how effective this is through assessments and other forms of evaluation after the crisis. But it does seem to be a good use of children's time and technological resources. Something that has been on my mind for the past few weeks is the disparity in levels of income and development. The spread, use, and availability of technology is key. However, is also the availability of good online learning materials, as well as devices and level of internet connectivity at home. The need to provide good computers and networking with decent internet connectivity and robust internet security for all. Also in a school like mine, where we have students from pre-primary to senior secondary, age groups from 3.5 years to probably 17 going on to 18, is the school-going students range. And hence, parents need to monitor the screen time of the children, the content that is readily available online, and also be aware that online addiction of students can easily happen. I've been constantly reminding the parents over the past 8 weeks. I try and put out a letter for them every week on different aspects of coping with this lockdown situation, beginning with the parents themselves, listening to themselves, how they are within themselves, because the children are the first to pick up those vibes. I ask a question: can students actually benefit from technology at home? And that's where we have a question of equity. While financially well-off families can afford computers, multiple devices, students from struggling families can hardly afford simple devices and may likely not have the internet at home. Lack of technology is also an indicator of poverty. Just as you had the robotic hand and the human hand in your poster, I'm asking another question. What is happening on the other end of the internet cable? I often wonder that. With home connectivity becoming widespread, students are able to connect to different types of learning resources. But what is actually happening? The resources need to ensure a minimum ability to deliver content. And in this technological scenario, no individual student can be excluded from the learning curve. I need to ensure in my position that every single student in every single class will have access to this online learning that we are supposed to put out. There are robust digital learning capabilities with educational content readily available regardless of place and time. But it is the need for the teacher training with digital technologies and applications. We need to get everyone on board, teachers, parents, and primarily the students. I think I've said enough for now.
Thank you so much, sir. Introducing the next speaker on our panel, we have Mr. Anmol Rathore. Mr. Rathore is the director of the St. Kabeer Academy, Dehradun, which is one of the largest schools in the town. He graduated from University of Birmingham with a degree in Human Resource Management and has previously worked for Shell as a HR assistant. Anmol, it is our pleasure and privilege to have you. If I can have your opening remarks, please.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Good evening all. The opening slide of this discussion, it was saying that global pandemic, coronavirus, and it has made us go online. So firstly, I believe it shouldn't have taken a global pandemic like coronavirus for the Indian education to explore online teaching and digital learning. Initially, the use of technology was limited, but the current situation has brought the online education to the fore. And when I'm saying this, I think it's applicable to my school as well. The digital learning was bounded to the classroom itself and not beyond it. We had never thought that, okay, in the next session, we might have to go completely online. and the students would stay at home and everything would be on Zoom or other or Google Meet or any other video calling device. So in a sense, I think the pandemic has led us to a discovery in disguise. The current pandemic has given us the opportunity to improve our infrastructure, especially the digital one, and education sectors have risen to it. Schools are trying to build on their infrastructure so that the crises does not hamper the curriculum. And for this very reason, digital transformation has become a new norm. I think this is an ideal time to accept technology and its latest offerings in order to make education delivery to students more efficient and make it more productive through various digital platforms, online assessments, or video classes. And many education institutes are doing it also. They're experimenting and deploying new technology to make education delivery possible even to the remotest part. I think use of technology has altered the way we educate in the past, and it will continue to do so. And this will definitely help the quality of education in India. Digital learning uses content and methods which are sometimes very hard to implement in a normal curriculum. They provide hands-on experience in many technical fields where simulations are possible. And for this very reason, methods of teaching online and learning deserves our highest praise. But again, since all the panelists have been discussing the cons also, so personally being the part of the management, what we have felt since we have gone online is the number one reason could be the reach. Certain students who are not in the town or who have gone back to the villages, they face problem with the bandwidth, and they're not able to connect to the teacher. They're not able to open the ERP. They're not able to access homework or the assignments which are being uploaded. And so they have been cut off. And the second reason would be the sharing of smartphones. For instance, there's a parent who has 3 children in my school. And since there is some relaxation now, so the father is opening his shop and the mother has only one phone and the online classes are together. So like her query was, what should I do? I can't on single smartphone, only one child can attend the class. So these are certain problems that we have been facing. And then again, the problem of income disparity and the internet connectivity, all these keep coming up. So, but I think the schools should embrace this change because the impact of COVID-19 will remain throughout this year. And I think a significantly large number of students will attend the classes from home. So schools should work towards making it more meaningful and productive. And at the same time, like Bharat sir and other panelists also said that we have to make sure that the content we are offering, be it through digital platforms or even the teacher uploading their own videos, they shouldn't be monotonous. See, the idea is not to replicate what we were teaching in the physical classroom and just putting it online. The idea is to use the technology that we have and to better the way we educate, the way we teach. And this is between, so also my friends, like we were just talking about this, and somebody had a question like, what if the schools go completely online? So I think that cannot be done. We cannot take the physical sites, that is our cement and brick schools or colleges, completely out of the equation. The physical classroom does not only impart the syllabus, but there's the element, the children are also socialized. There's an element of sports and play. And so I told him, while, like Pythagoras theorem or the Newton's law could be easily transmitted in the digital classroom, but the matrix for socialization cannot be replicated on a computer screen. You have to come to school, you have to meet your friends, you have to be in a social environment. Nevertheless, I think digital learning can be fruitful it fills the gaps that are in the classroom model of education. To close, I believe when things are normal and students come back to school, I believe we are going to see a hybrid model of education. Digital learning will supplement, support, and amplify the techniques of on-site education. The integration of information technology will accelerate. Schools were using digital learning, but I think this pandemic would just expedite the entire process, and online education will become an integral component of school education. Thank you.
Thank you, Anmol. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. It was lovely hearing them coming from a young professional, also who's in a senior management of a wonderful school. Our next speaker is Ms. Meghna Laha. Ms. Laha has 10 years of corporate experience in strategy and planning, business development, and business initiatives. She was actively involved in social development projects in leading multinational aid organizations such as UNDP, DFID, and Niti Aayog India. Her most commendable achievement has been her tenure at the World Bank at the Washington, D.C., USA, as an environmental and social development consultant in monitoring and evaluation of 42 projects in Africa. She has an MPA in economic policy making from SIPA, Columbia University, New York City, USA, and an MS in environmental and resource economics from the University of Rhode Island. Currently, she works with us at Notebook as an advisor, and her inputs are invaluable in helping us trying to bridge this digital divide. Meghna, over to you.
Thank you, Shivayu. Am I audible?
Yeah, Meghna.
Yes, okay. So first of all, I would really want to thank the Notebook team for allowing me to be a part of this esteemed panel. And also would like to extend a warm thanks to my fellow panelists for such thoughtful inputs. I'd like to take the discussion forward a little bit with some examples that I have seen that have been relevant across the world. And I know that our time is invaluable, and so I'll just try to make it as short and crisp as possible. Starting with the discussion first, let me first tell you that, I think that the example of pottery is a brilliant example that explains the challenges that we are facing right now. A potter spins a pottery wheel with a ball of clay, and as he sees it spin and trying to mold it, he finds that it's not so easy to just mold the clay for what he wants to make out of it. He discovers that clay has also a mind of its own, and he can only do it with some element of expertise and skill. So at these challenging times, therefore, we ought to appreciate the fact that students have a mind of their own. And all we can do is try to mold it or help it grow with our given tools of teachers' expertise and skills. Coming to the current topic, I would like to begin with a global perspective where other countries have adopted these skills just as we are trying to. And these examples are relevant because they are from developing countries, just like India, facing infrastructural challenges, communication problems, device issues, and network issues. The information has been directly drawn from the World Bank website. So I shall just begin with Bulgaria. Bulgaria is the first example. In all the country examples that I'm going to be sharing with you here, which is just about 3 examples that I have right now, I would want to give you a 3-step process, suggestion that all these countries have used to deal with their problems. In Bulgaria, those have been such that regional educational institutions supported nearly 7 lakh students and 65,000 teachers in trying to standardize teaching methods through national TV channels. Alongside, very intelligently, they created an e-learning repository with video lessons, training programs, innovative methodologies, tests, films, exercises, entertaining pedagogy, and presentations. They also made initiatives to subscribe to major platforms such as Google and Microsoft that were offering free subscriptions. So that was Bulgaria. Next, in Argentina, I'll move on to Argentina. The approach was a bit different from with the Seguimos Educando, that means continuing to educate. They used this continuing to educate approach which again clearly had three very important steps. One was resources, the class of the day, and the choice of the device. Again, the best part was that they built resources for families and teachers, helped them connect with social networks via websites, specially built for this purpose. On that website that they built, they would also plant their plans for the day for the children, wherein daily learning proposals go out to students on how they can handle their defined learning objectives. Finally, the choice of the tech medium also plays an important role, as we all know, and Argentina chose Intercom that allowed browsing of data completely free of charge. So that was with Argentina. And then, of course, the third example that I thought was very important and relevant to the discussion that we are having today is Egypt. And this country used Edmodo to deliver remote instruction to the country's remote learning body by first getting into a contract. And this contract was done with Edmodo that fantastically delivered remote instruction to the country's entire K-12 student body. They have a fantastic communication channel. It caters to 22 million students and 55,000 schools. Egypt diligently emphasized on the assessment systems of these students as well, wherein students were asked to finish the curriculum online and senior students went through computer-based tests. The good part of this was that although these tests were graded, many of them were merely used for assessment and not as a deciding factor for pass and fail. So students were not under the pressure of losing school years. Many of these suggestions that I have just made have been, lately adapted, as late as April 2020, just at the onset of this pandemic. So I think, we could actually adopt many of these initiatives back home in India as well. So these were just my opening remarks for the session. Thank you for giving me a patient hearing. I would just want to mention one extra thing that Sir Roy De Silva brought up with the hands that were closing on. This is obviously the creation of our co-founder Shubhayu, who basically, this is from the painting that we have on the walls of Vatican City, where Michelangelo tries to bridge to express the feeling, the hand of God touching the hand of human. And in this case, the hand of God has been replaced with the digital hands. So with that, I would like to end my opening remarks. Over to you, Shubhayu. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghna, for that. Now that we have the opening remarks, we have seen Mr. De Silva's concern over how economic divides get amplified by digitalization. We have seen Mr. Rathore's wonderful take on how his school is adopting digital, and he actually raised a question if brick and mortar needs to be there at all or not, but we definitely know that they will be there. Meghna has given us wonderful views from 3 different international case studies where different countries have adopted different methods to solve the needs of digital education. We will open the panel discussion now. My first question to the panel is, what are the things that a school needs to consider while choosing a digital learning platform? I will start with Mr. De Silva. Sir, we are asking what are the things that a school needs to consider while choosing a digital learning platform?
Yeah. I would like to respond under 4 brief heads. First of all, educators have to respond by, we as educators have had to respond by taking our courses online within a matter of days. We weren't given any preparation time. And we might say that this COVID pandemic came as a challenge, but now looking back, it is also a gift. It made us get into our tracks very quickly. Many of us lacked the experience of teaching online, and we are scrambling to figure out how to make remote classes work for our various teaching modules. However, the good news is that online teaching and learning can be just as effective as an in-person classroom. And let me elaborate that in some other ways. When we go into online work, we need to be present with the right tools and resources. That's often a challenge. When using a remote conferencing software, or to live stream your classes, or post slides in an online classroom, or to enhance one's own personal teaching style, one can get muddled, especially if one is used to interacting regularly with students, as I am. The divide between students and teachers can also become heightened in online classes, making it all the more important to ensure that one remains accessible and within easy reach. So the online method should not somehow take away the real presence of the instructor, of the teacher. Another aspect is that we need to approach online teaching with an openness and a learning mindset for ourselves. For many educators, the prospect of moving our classes online was daunting. How would we embrace it? That was making all the difference. In my own life, I'm not sure whether I even entered a touch of depression during the past few weeks. First of all, it was a bit of anger, confusion, and to be very honest, we just lost touch with human beings. Everything became sort of digital, and I was not used to that. There is a learning curve for us instructors who have never used classroom technology before, but it is also an important opportunity to become better educators. I've noticed that since moving our classes online, there is a challenge with figuring out how to account for laboratory class activities, which students can easily access through Zoom or maybe through OLabs and the other digital fora. But we need to explore that as well, particularly for the senior classes. When we talk about the school adopting some online strategies, we need to stay organized with the content to be delivered. 8 weeks have gone by and I have to keep reminding myself, how am I documenting what has been put out there? How am I doing it? How is every single teacher in the school doing it? What he or she has been putting out online, which is accessible to everyone. And possibly how are the students on the home front doing it as well? Otherwise, it will all be a muddle. Storing the recorded lessons, discussions, homework assignments, with everything in one place, we as teachers will be able to follow up and connect the dots between homework completion and content comprehension. Organizing our online course in a methodical way to ensure that it is easy to navigate by all stakeholders, students, parents, as well as the school management to whom we are answerable. Students should be able to progress through the course content easily so that their attention remains focused on learning the material rather than searching for specific content. I'm reminded of a little anecdote that happened recently. I'd just like to share it with you that in the sports department, they were asked to do certain exercises and put those out as a video. And so while the sports exercise took a few minutes, the parent says, my son spent 3 hours shooting, editing, and sending the video in the right format to the teacher. So finally, what is the priority in the entire task that we have put for ourselves? Finally, we need to embrace the benefits of technology. Technology can help ensure that students stay engaged and participate in active learning before, during, and after the class, regardless of whether they are learning within a physical classroom or remotely from home. For example, before class, students could be assigned pre-reading from digital sources in order to encourage engagement with the subject matter. During class, one could encourage student participation through online discussion fora. And after class, we could assign homework on a teaching platform with auto-grade capabilities. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when making the move to an online classroom. With so many platforms, so many tools and technologies, uncovering the best way to connect with students can be daunting. But the good news is that many providers are stepping up to offer their services. Many of them are offering them for free to help mitigate potential challenges associated with moving classes online. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those comments. Anmol, if I could have your inputs, how does your school choose an online education platform? What are the criteria? Anmol, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorted.
I think when we're talking about choosing digital platforms, we look for a platform that is interactive, is inclusive, and can be customized. When I say interactive and inclusive, I mean a structure that uses engagement methods that promotes personalization and intelligence. For instance, online assessments. So if a platform has online assessments, so the students and the parents as well can track their progress. The teachers can monitor the student's performance and plan accordingly how the student is performing. Also, I feel, I think this is a personal belief, integration of games, especially for the younger kids, because studies have proven that children use, they learn, they use their senses to learn. So I think games can make learning fun and effective. So that should promote higher engagement and increase motivation. And I came across this app, Edpuzzle. So on that app, you can choose from a plethora of educational videos from YouTube, Khan Academy, TED, TEDx. And what you can do, you can do a voiceover. So you can give it your voice. You can add notes to it in between the video. You can ask open-ended questions. You can ask MCQs. So I think other than the content the digital platform is offering, if there's a facility that the teacher can upload her own video, I think a child connects well if she sees her teacher. So that's a personal belief. So if this is an add-on feature, that would be just a plus point. And lastly, I think the flexibility, the reach, and the richer experience are some of the key features that one looks for while choosing a digital platform. Thank you.
Thanks, Anmol. Meghna, quickly, we need your comments on how does a school choose, and you have to unmute yourself.
That's right. Okay, so I'll just go very quickly on this and very briefly, and I'll go with some of the points that Anmol had stated. But mine would be, I have 4 basic points. First of all, I think that we need to choose a platform that provides equal emphasis on all subjects and caters to a mixed bag of students, not just the extraordinary ones in school. So we should have tech platforms that basically cater to their to a cross section of students and a cross section of different IQs levels, and depending upon how students can adapt to the platform. The platform should also be easily accessible, not just within school, but beyond the walls of the school. After school viewing of content is very important, I think. So I think the platform should have those advantages as well. And they should also follow a definite teaching methodology with repository of notes, trying to maintain a perfect balance between text and video content. So 3 most important points, Shuvayu, that I want to really harp on. One is accessibility, affordability, and ease of execution factors. I think those are the 3 most important things that the owners and headmasters and mistresses across CBSE board schools need to look into while they're choosing an EdTech platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you especially for keeping that really quick and brief. We will go on to the second question. And Anmol, will start with you this time. The question asks, how can we ensure technology adoption amongst teachers, parents, and students?
So I think for this, particularly for this time, there was some resistance because of the abruptness with which all this transpired. One day the students were coming to the school, and after a week or next day you say everything will be online. So I think it was hard to digest for the parents and the students that everything will be online. So I think with proper communication and training to the parents and students, we can overcome this. We need to educate the parents about the pros and the cons of digital learning or online education. We need to ensure that the safety of students in the digital space. I think that's one of the prime concerns of the parents, that because there is so much available online, what if my son or my daughter is distracted, and the privacy of their content and everything. So I think we need to ensure the safety of the students. And regarding the teachers, I think teachers understand it very well that they need to keep upgrading their skills. So they should embrace it, and they would, because teachers know it's like life is an ongoing learning process. And so I think they should embrace it and accept it and upgrade their skills because of all that has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Anmol. Mr. Da Silva, if you could have your views on this. In your school, how have you ensured that the teachers, the students, and even their parents can adapt technology?
Yes, as the other panelists have already mentioned, I would just like to pick up what Mr. Anmol Rathore has said. This entire online platform was somehow thrust upon us, and while we kind of dived in at the deep end, we are now trying to find our way to how to really make it meaningful for everyone. In St. Stephen's, we have tried to keep it as simple as possible for the time being, so that accessibility is achieved by all. We try and not overtax the bandwidth and stuff like that, so that the material going out from the school is done in sort of capsules that they're able to save in their devices and go back to it later, rather than having everything going online live sessions, which kind of clashes with the timing of parents and their responsibilities and what have you. So that's basically what we are trying to do. We're trying to send out material that that's giving them a sort of confidence in what they have to do. They get it once a week. We send it to them once a week because that's the baby stage we are at right now. And since it's working, we've continued to do it for these weeks. It goes out, all the subjects go out on a particular day, generally on a Sunday night or a Monday morning. And then it's up to the home front to break it up into little pieces, so that they have the opportunity, the parents or the adults at home have an opportunity to monitor what's happening and to also know what is the entire task that's cut out for the week. Sometimes sending things out on a daily basis doesn't give one a sense of the entire portion that is to be done. So we have adopted this system whereby we send out the whole thing, and then it's up to them to work their way through it. It's not the best system. It's something that we are working on. Hopefully we will try and evolve something as the weeks go by, for however long this sort of purely online classes last. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Meghna, you have the unenviable task of bringing to this wonderful discussion.
Yes, I do. And Shubhayu, I'll just take about 3 to 4 minutes of your time. I need to address a few more, very important points, and like the participants, request the participants to be a little patient with this while I go through these points. It won't take more than 3 to 4 minutes. So I'd start with the teachers first. I think teachers are very important, and we need to acquaint them with the tech platforms that the school decides to, adopt. And they need to, basically be very comfortable with the system. Major skills on device usage or navigation of the site need to be standardized among them. And while we are dealing with this pandemic situation and the adoption challenge, we're also dealing with some of the fear factors of teachers. And I think that's a good thing, because it can basically motivate them even more to engage in fruitful discussions and workshops. So schools should arrange teacher training sessions with the edtech platforms that they are adopting. So that is my first point. And I think that I think teaching is a very noble profession. So the emotional well-being factor of teachers gets automatically addressed as we handhold them through this situation. As far as the tech part is concerned, teachers and senior students may want to get used to using the chat platforms, uploading and downloading of files on WhatsApp, and usage of Google Drives. Sharing of information through chat platforms actually solves more than 70% of the communication problem. So simple, uploading and downloading of document practices actually would reduce the burden on teachers to a very great extent. So that was the first point. The second is, of course, addressing needs of the owners of the schools. Owners may want to revisit their priorities to a certain extent and see how they would want to run their schools in the next few months, put across their plans and ideas to headmasters and key people in the administration, develop specific guidelines on student, teacher, parent activities, and these could combine the interests of all the stakeholders or individually address them. So that is what I think is a very important task ahead of owners of schools, as far as they are concerned. With parents, I have a few suggestions. Parents may want to convert small corners or spaces at homes to classrooms, where children have the look and feel of a classroom with necessary gadgets. Siblings need to be made conscious of their much required sessions of remote learning at home. And these are very important changes that even parents need to adapt to. And one key aspect that needs some attention is that schools really need to restrict online hours of teaching to a set number of hours that is comfortable for students, so that they can ensure wholesome development. So apart from this, the last point that I would like to address is that of what schools could think of doing for parents. Parents need to be constantly engaged in webinar and talking sessions for at least the next 3 to 4 months, till the point that they are completely comfortable and that they are on board. Their participation should be made mandatory to a certain extent in at least few of these sessions that the schools conduct. And this is a very important channel that needs to be made use of for communication with school administrators, changing modes of teaching and what they're clearly going to expect in the next few months. That was about majority of the points that I wanted to address, and that's all from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meghna.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Da Silva. Thank you so much, Anmol, for being a part of this discussion. The points have been invaluable. I'm sure everybody who has attended today will go back richer for them. It is now time to move on to our next segment, because that's all we have time for, other questions and answers. During the registration process, we had taken questions from people who were registering, and later during the course of this webinar, several people have typed their questions into the Q&A box. We will try to take them one by one. The first question is for Mr. Philip Bharat, sir. Sir, if you're there.
Yes, Shubhayu.
So the question asks, sir, I'm a principal in a suburban school. Please guide me on how I can upgrade my skills during lockdown, and how I can inspire and guide my teachers to also upskill themselves.
Okay, so let me first start by saying that I'm very impressed with this principal, because somebody who wants to help his teachers, even in a time like this, is a wonderful man. I'd like to have a principal like this. I think all principals need to be vigilant and cognizant of the fact that ongoing teacher development is a fact of life, whether it's a pandemic or not. The schools I work in, they had a teacher center where we were mandated to do a certain amount of hours of teacher training or on anything from counseling to mentorship to how you take kids out into the wilds. So now that there's a pandemic on, my advice to the gentleman would be that stay in touch with your teachers. It's very important to be concerned with their learning, with their physical and emotional well-being. It's also important to find out how they're doing, what are the problems they're facing. It's also very important to ask them at this time how they envisage the hybrid system once schools reopen. I think it's important to get their inputs and then brainstorm so that when you do come to a decision on how the school will run post the pandemic, you would not have done it on your own, but you would have taken the voices of all your teachers. Um, uh, as far as learning yourself, that's a great thing. It's important eh, for yourself and your teachers to get as much digital education as possible, because this is the way the world is going. So even the most resistant of teachers who should be coaxed and cajoled into improving their skills digitally. I think it's important to talk about the books you're reading, to talk about the news that you're listening to. It's important to even connect with your teachers at this time and see how they need your help. I hope that's answered your question.
Perfectly, sir. Thank you so much. We will quickly move on to the next question. Now, this question, I will address it to the two principals that we have on our panel today. If Mrs. Acharya and Mr. Da Silva, if you're available, I will throw this question open to both of you. The question asks, what would be the top two changes once the schools reopen after this lockdown, especially with regards to digital education, given your experience during the lockdown phase? And I'm asking both of you because in two very different geographies, you are dealing with lockdowns in your own school, having to adopt digital classes, etc. What would you think would be the two major changes once the schools reopen? Mrs. Acharya, if I could have you first.
Thank you. Well, my first take is once the schools reopen, remote learning or digital learning will remain to be there. Because as per the SOPs which are doing rounds at the present moment, we get to understand that we'll be only having about 30% of students with us physically. Therefore, the rest of the 70% probably, even if we come in shifts or otherwise, we will have to depend a lot on digital learning. Therefore, it is the new normal, like one of the panelists said a couple of minutes back. So it is there to stay, and we just need to think as to how we can make it a little more effective and little more innovative, so that we are able to get the attention of our students in the similar manner we had them when we were having them in the classroom. So it is to stay. Therefore, all we need to do, like I said, is to get better with it. The second thing, which is going to be a huge monster for us to deal with, would be the sanitization and the hygiene factor that needs to be now looked into more minutely. See, our side of the world here has a whole lot of problem with the fee which is going around, right? The parents are doing a lot of agitation, a lot of lockdown. I mean, beyond the school gates, even in spite of the social distancing, we are in an orange zone, but there are huge agitations going on regarding submission of fees and the annual session fee, etc. Therefore, if we have to practically look at the expenditure that we now have to incur because of sanitation to be kept in mind primarily, it's going to be a big challenge for schools. And please understand, if anything in the school goes wrong, it's only one person who is responsible, and that's the principal. We not only have to answer our management, we have to answer the parents outside, we have to answer the media outside, we have to answer the community outside. So therefore, our side of the world, our side of the country, it's a huge question. it feels very bad for me to share this, but I have to. There are parents who are equating the school fees to the pronunciation of teachers. All I need to say is, parents, teachers are not a part of the fee structuring formula. It's the management who does it. They are not a part of it. Don't drag them. That's all. But then it's happening. It's happening. Therefore, a lot of new challenges are coming up, but the things which would stay with us forever now would be, of course, the digital learning platforms and the sanitation, which will come in very, very heavily.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Da Silva, if you could have your comments on this, please. The top 2 changes that you foresee for your school.
Yes, I started off my intervention this evening by saying that the corona pandemic has stopped schooling, but it hasn't stopped learning. So when the entire world is almost locked down due to this virus, it's probably the best time for us to go online, to use technology and to decide not to stop learning and upgrading ourselves. And that goes for everyone, right from myself to the teachers, including the parents so far as they are able, and definitely the students. Let's make sure that during these days and the days ahead, we continue to be more knowledgeable, more enthusiastic, and more energetic. We often, it's nice to kind of ride on the shoulders of giants. I'm not saying anyone is a giant right now, but just at the time when we were unsure of how things were moving ahead, I got some circulars from the CBSE, and I need to just quote something that Dr. Sayam Bardwaj, who's the controller of examinations, has said in the last paragraph of the circular that he wrote to the principals, to the evaluators, to the coordinators. He said, the world is passing through this difficult time. The country has seen your devotion during COVID-19. When the entire country was at a standstill under lockdown, teachers were unstoppable and continued online classes. I salute you for your exemplary work. Think positive, be safe and healthy, and always remain motivated. So if we are motivated, motivation is contagious. It will spread. It will spread to everyone. The day we reopen, the day we see our students again, they must read it on us that we are motivated and we are unstoppable. And that would take things forward.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that extremely positive message that you would leave all our teachers with. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time and we would need to wrap up quickly because there's a storm raging outside. I don't know if all of you who are listening to me are having frequent outages in my voice signal, but this is Calcutta. We have just gone past a cyclone and unfortunately there's a major storm brewing outside. I will just take one more last question. But before I get into that question, we have a lot of questions that we will address over email. We have been doing that over the last few weeks. Also, we have 2 interactive sessions exclusively for teachers every day, one in the morning, one in the evening. If you have questions about digital learning, on how to use the notebook platform, or you just want to have a better feel of digital learning processes in general, you are more than welcome to join any of them like this one. Those are also free and open, but those are specifically meant for teachers. We will move on to the last question now. Ochin, if you're there, this one's for you. A school director from Hyderabad says, I have seen your videos. They have great engagement, could not turn off the video in between. How do you cover a topic which is taught in 40 minutes classroom in a 6 to 8 minute video? What is the process of editing? I know you have spoken about editing, but if you could just quickly take this one.
Sure. So I think great question. So before answering this, just to share a very small incident, I'll just take a minute. I remember 3 years back, me and Shubhayu, when we were just starting our journey, we visited one of the most famous editors in the country who runs a very successful media house. So a couple of newspapers, both in vernacular as well as English, as well as a TV news channel. And I asked him that, sir, what does it take to make engaging content? He had just a one-word answer for me: Caesar. He said, whatever my journalists write, I ensure that when it comes to me, I ensure that it's not repetitive, it's crisp and to the point. So razor sharp editing is the key to build any kind of engaging content. So we came back that day and we gave it a lot of thought. We were thinking on these lines, that how do we really do it? It's a very pertinent point. The process that we follow to build our content, whenever we start working on a particular topic, we invite one of our senior teachers. We work with a lot of teachers, one of our senior teachers to come and teach that particular topic. And a group of content writers, they attend that particular class. Normally we do it with more than one teacher. So a particular topic, at least there are 2 or more than 2 sessions. The content team takes vital notes, tries to understand that, okay, fine, these are the vital takeaways which we need to ensure that we do cover, and start working on the content. Once the script is built, they again run it past the teacher to ensure that we have not missed on anything which is important, which is vital, right? Also, I'll add that, see, when you build audio-visual content, it's a little easier. I salute the teachers because, when you teach in a classroom scenario, in a chalk and talk pedagogy, it's far more difficult. In audio-visual, you have far more aids at your disposal. You can use visuals. At times, visual speaks much more than words. Also, considering the fact that we try to keep the engagement quotient maximum, the student is far more attentive. So those 6 to 8 minutes are very productive 6 to 8 minutes, right? Once the particular content is built, we run it past a core group consisting of students, teachers, parents, etc. before a particular video gets a green signal to be uploaded. So we ensure that coverage is adequate. Also, if you look at our content pedagogy, the way we have structured our content, every topic, we start with the interest builder, either a separate video or built into the lesson video. We move on to the lesson video. We again have a recap and a question answer video as a backup. So if you look at the total length of the content, it's more than 6 to 8 minutes. We also add on with recap, question answer, and we also have a detailed repository of written notes and question answers. So we ensure adequate coverage is like an entire buffet laid in front of you, so that the student can choose depending on his or her need. If a student is studying a topic for the first time, when exams are not round the corner, definitely it will need far more detailed study. But if there's a class test or an exam next day, and a student wants a very quick revision, we ensure that we provide that as well. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Shubham.
Thank you, Achin. And with that, we will close the question answer session today. As I said before, we would try to get back to as many of you as possible over email. And if you have any other queries, please feel free to write into us. Or if you want to give feedback about our website, our content, anything really, write into feedback@notebook.school. With that, I would like to invite Achin back to this to give you the vote of thanks. Achin, if you can have you back, please.
Sure. I think it was a great session, really great session with a lot of practical insights. Bharat sir, you are very crisp and covered all points, all important points, I'll say. Neeraj Bali, really liked your focused views, and they're very contemporary and shows you deep understanding. Sutapa ma'am, liked your practical understanding. We all learned a lot of things, and indeed inspiring what you said. Mr. De Silva, very balanced views. Just the way you started off, that when I asked a question, which side are you? You said, I'm right in the middle. So very, very balanced views, I must appreciate, and shows great depth of maturity. Anmol, I found your views very refreshing, honest. Great to see youngsters like you take up education administration. Meghna, thanks for the case studies in international parallels. Really added a lot of value. And I would like to really thank our audience. It is with your encouragement that We are doing these webinars twice a week. We've got a phenomenal response, as Shubhayu mentioned. And we really look forward to your active support in the days to come. We have our next webinar on coming Saturday. The topic is Art of Communication. We really look forward to having all of you back. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.